All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to College Conversations. My name is Richard Retha, the Assistant Director for the APH Connect Center. We are pleased to be offering what I believe is the third one in our quarterly series, and we've got quite a presentation. Today's College Conversations is communicating your needs with vocational rehabilitation. We're going to have a few panelists join us this afternoon. I'm going to hand it off to Lisa Lloyd, one of our APH Career Connect and Connect Center advisors, who's going to kind of co-MC this along with Lori and myself and Lee, who are panelists. But having been a rehab counselor, a vocational rehabilitation counselor in my past, I like this conversations because I think it's really needed, really geared for that high school student out there that entering freshman in college who's not sure what to expect from vocational rehabilitation. What are some of the things that Voc Rehab can support, and what are some of the things that Voc Rehab might not be able to support? We do know that on an individual, everything's on a case-by-case basis, and that's why this afternoon we have a series of panelists, some who are students and some of us who are current rehabilitation professionals working, and I can't wait for them to introduce themselves. We have put the credits and everything in the chat, and we're going to ask that if you do have questions, unlike what we do for employment connections or career conversations, please try and save your questions for the end in the chat. Can we make sure the chat is enabled, Katie? Sometimes we do face that issue. And if you do have a question that needs clarification, we can certainly address that. Otherwise, we will field those questions towards the end. And again, this is a 90-minute webinar for College Conversations to allow for more time. Again, welcome to College Conversations, communicating your needs with vocational rehabilitation. I'm going to hand it over to Lisa Lloyd. Lisa, good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa Lloyd, and I get the pleasure of working with our Career Connect student advisory students. And we have one on with us today, and I'm hoping that Jacob will be able to join us. I wanted to have everyone have the opportunity to introduce themselves. And I just wanted to say for myself that I am also a parent of a child who is blind at California School for the Blind, and she is a Department of Rehabilitation client as of 14 years old. And with that, I will hand it over to our first panelist, Alexis.
Good evening. My name is Alexis Reed. I am the transition counselor for Florida Division of Blind Services in Jacksonville. And I am also an individual with a visual impairment.
Thank you. I forgot to mention I'm also an individual with an visual impairment. Okay, wonderful. Allison?
Yes, hi everybody. It's so good to be here. My name is Allison Stephen. I work for the Idaho Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired as a transition coordinator. You can hear I've got an accent. I originally grew up in England, just in case you were wondering. And I'm blind. I have retinitis pigmentosa.
Thank you. And Giselle?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Giselle. I'm currently a third-year undergrad student at San Francisco State University studying sociology. I also have a visual impairment, and I'm also a client of Department of Rehabilitation since I was 14.
Great. Good. Well, I'm not sure that Jacob joined us yet. Have Jacob on board yet?
Our fourth panelist, Jacob, is he?
I don't see him in the attendees. I've not seen
So
him.
Okay.
he's running late, but we'll add him to the mix as we go, so we can get started with the questions.
So for our first question, and this will be for our Department of Rehab or VR professionals in different states. We have different names. So in California, we say Department of Rehabilitation, and in a lot of other states, it's Vocational Rehabilitation, VR. So just wanted to clarify that. So our first question is, what community and financial supports and services does VR offer, and how old does a student need to be to qualify?
So I can start. The workforce innovation or Investment Opportunities Act encourages students as young as 14 in order to start applying for services. Now, a 14-year-old can receive such services as orientation and mobility, work-based learning experiences, job readiness, things of that nature from a local community rehabilitation provider. Starting young at the age of 14 gives a student an opportunity to perfect skills such as job readiness, self-advocacy, resume writing, so that they can be prepared for life after high school. Now, when a student graduates from high school, there can be more services provided by VR, such as assistance with college, if that fits in with a student's vocational goal, additional training. So for example, orientation and mobility to learn a college campus or work site, and assistive technology in order for the student to be able to complete schoolwork or work tasks on the job.
Thank you. That was very thorough. Allison, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, this is kind of hard. I don't want to be repetitive in any way. One of the things that we also do, because we're some states have a separate agency for blindness, and then other disabilities in an agency, which is the case in Idaho. In that case, if there are students who have other disabilities, then we work alongside. We have a dual case alongside the general agency, so that we can cover all the needs of any student. We can do things as well. I think you've covered a lot of it, Alexis, like low vision evaluations, and we've got the instruction in self-advocacy, and just a lot of counseling and guidance is available. Basically, what I love about VR is that it's very much catered to each individual student, that whatever their needs are, wherever they're at whichever age they're at. So at 14 years old, we're able to provide something that's very much relevant to them at that age versus when they're graduating high school. So it's highly individualized, what we can do. We have rehab teachers that will work with the students individually, and then we have programs that are provided, particularly in the summer is the most likely time, but also through the year, that will provide work experience or college prep programs or work readiness programs. So just all the skills that would be needed. And one other thing, I guess, that I'd like to add is that it's a gradual process that happens. And for students in school, when you get to the end of high school, the supports from the school will stop. The wonderful thing about VR is that we're kind of give that continuity. We allow the students to kind of carry on with the same supports that we've provided from the get-go. So it helps to bridge the gap from high school to college. It's definitely worth considering getting involved earlier rather than later for that to be a smoother transition.
And Giselle, you were involved as young as 14, and I'm just curious, how did that happen? Did your mom and dad know to get you involved? Did your TVI instruct you to do so?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I first became a client when I was 14. I was about halfway through my freshman year of high school, and it was kind of brought about to me from my TVI. Since very early on, I had expressed that I was interested in pursuing a four-year university right after high school. So she recommended that I start getting registered as a client with DOR from early on, so I could have that support and like Allison was saying right now, just having that extra support from the transition from high school to college. And during high school, they helped me out with providing financial support for me to attend various blindness related workshops with the Lighthouse for the Blind here in San Francisco. And I was able to attend those workshops for the weekend thanks to the financial support from DOR. As I transitioned into college, they were really supportive in helping me get the technology that I needed. So for example, my MacBook Pro and my RailNote Touch, as well as like a printer. And now that I am in college, one of the biggest resources that they have been able to provide for me has been receiving orientation and mobility services here on my college campus to get a better orientation of where my classes are and other buildings that I need to get to. They have also financially supported me with getting books and supplies. So that has definitely been very helpful. As all of you may know, college is very expensive. So any kind of support like that that I can get is very much welcomed.
And the mobility and orientation, I was going to say that can change every semester. You might need a bit more support because your classes change now that you're back on site. I would
Correct. Exactly. And I actually was not aware that DOR offered this service until I was like transitioning into college. Also, I moved to a new city, San Francisco. So I have also been receiving orientation and mobility to learn different routes here in the city. So I've done a lot of orientation here on campus, but I've also had the possibility to receive that orientation off of campus.
Wonderful. Okay, we'll move on to our next question. What student behaviors or characteristics improve VR or DOR student outcomes or successes?
I'm happy to. Oh, you want to go ahead? Sorry, Alexis.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
We'll switch up. Okay. I think one big thing that obviously we would encourage is the participation in the activities and programs that are offered, and that, you know, it may seem like a little thing, like, do I really want to do this program? Is it really relevant to me now? But I think there are a lot of skills that are gained outside of just what the content is. When students take part in activities, there's a lot of the social skills and those interactions, the networking with their peers and with role models and that kind of thing. So you find that there's accumulation over time as students participate. So that is definitely one big piece. Following through with communication, making sure that you are talking to the people you need to talk to and getting the information you need. I think for me, curiosity and a strong desire to learn new things, that really helps the student to engage and to get what they need out of our programs. And then a big one for me is perseverance. That's kind of something with blindness that seems to be really essential, is that you have to keep on going because you'll hit obstacles, and just being able to not give up at the first obstacle, but to just go, no, I'm not going to let this stop me.
I call that pleasantly persistent.
Pleasantly persistent. There you go. Exactly. And then connecting with adults in you know, whether that be obviously with parents, but with the staff at the VR agency, and then other organizations that particularly with people with blindness, that you can then have role models. That's I think I'll stop there and let Alexis, if you've got stuff to add to that.
Yes, so the communication is a big one. It's very important, I think, for the student and parent to be in regular communication with their counselor or other service providers, because if there is a lack of communication, the case probably will be closed as unable to locate or contact. And then the student would have to start all over with the application process. So it's real important that students, parents are in regular communication with the professional. The other important area in my experience is self-advocacy. So that is for the student advocating with the rehab professional regarding their needs. So does the student need to go to college for this particular vocational goal? And that's real important, is advocating what they need and what they feel is important for their success, because the professional can say one thing and mom and dad can say another, but ultimately it's boils down to client choice, and the student is the client in this triad.
Thank you. Giselle, did you have anything you wanted to add in there?
Yeah, so I think Alexis and Allison both covered a lot of what I was going to say, but yes, definitely self-advocacy and communication are both really important. For me, in terms of communication, I make it a point to stay in touch with my Department of Rehab counselor, even if I don't need anything from them at the moment. So, for example, I still send over my transcripts every semester and just check in here and there, giving them updates as to where I'm at with my educational journey, and yeah, just maintaining that connection, even if I don't need anything. And of course, with self-advocacy, sometimes we may find ourselves in a situation where we need some help with something and we don't know who to reach out to. So I would say that Department of Rehab is definitely a good resource. Even if they are not able to help you, I'm sure they will be able to refer you to someone who can. And also, I would say just having a plan. I think it's really important for the student and the Department of Rehab counselor to, get together and just have an educational plan or employment plan for the student, and to be able to just have that like laid out and then be able to carry that out in steps.
That leads us to our next question, actually. How can students, especially younger students, better hone in on or prepare their employment goals? And is college always necessary?
So I can start with that one. I think it's very important that students have the opportunity to participate in interest inventories or other evaluation opportunities that will allow them to learn about their strengths, their weaknesses, their vocational areas of interest. So having all of that information, whether it's an official vocational evaluation or informal interest inventories, will help guide the student and the rehab professional to determine an employment goal. Now, are students 14, 15, 16 years old going to stick with that employment goal? Maybe, maybe not, but at least there's a starting point. So if a student has an employment goal, for example, illustrator, college may or may not be needed for that. It just, it really depends on how they want to use that in the workforce. Now, if a student says they want to be a teacher of the visually impaired, then of course college will be needed. Mm-hmm. So in order to determine whether the rehab agency will support college, there needs to be discussion of the student's grades. There needs to be discussion of the student's academic skills, not just grades, but can they handle complicated coursework? Can they handle all that's involved in post-secondary education? And, you know, if it's determined that a student cannot handle post-secondary education or doesn't have the grades for that, then the rehab professional and student need to really think about whether college is even necessary for that student. Because college is not always necessary for someone to achieve an employment goal. And I think too often students after high school think, oh, well, I've graduated high school, now I have to go to college. Not necessarily. There are lots of trade schools available and other less rigorous paths to employment than the four-year bachelor's degree. So I think, just to kind of sum up, I think it's important for students to have the opportunity to take interest inventories and also job shadow people in their areas of interest. So there's a lot that goes into helping a student decide whether college is the right fit.
And I was going to add informational interviewing too, which can really help the student more. Did you want to add anything, Allison?
Yeah, no, I really like what you said, Alexis. And I think it brings up a point that I've noticed with schools. The teachers often will ask the student, what do they want to do as a career goal? And it can be that there is no sort of reality check on that the student is, you know, they want to be a rocket scientist, whatever, and there's not someone saying, well, what does it take to do that? And there can be just that encouragement, oh yeah, that's great, we'll put that down as your goal. And I think it's really important to be open to assessing how realistic is this goal and making sure that the student understands what the steps are required to get to that point of being able to be in college, to study for that, or to even to be working at whatever the goal is. So I was thinking, you know, that the whole getting ready to work sort of starts from birth. I think, you know, it's all about what is called in WIOA is workplace readiness skills. All of those skills that enable someone to function as an adult and be able to work. Things like, you know, just the mobility that we've talked about, and then using being able to read, so Braille or whatever the tools are that are needed and the skills are that are needed. But it sort of begins right from the get-go and is something that accumulates over time. It's not something that you suddenly turn around at 18 and go, right, okay, what do I need for college or for work? I feel like student-led IEPs are just an amazing opportunity to build those kind of skills. It's an opportunity for the student to self-advocate and to just represent themselves. It's something that we can help with or encourage as a VR agency. It's not really our main focus. I'm trying to see what else I have that you didn't already
cover it all.
I think the one other thing, I don't know if you said, but it's just plain old work experience. So with the programs that we have in the summer, we pay the students, but then they will be put with an employer, and they spend their time actually working and trying out different jobs. It's not about hitting the perfect job first time, but it's about getting experiences in lots of different areas to really understand what's available out there and what do I like to do and what am I good at. So yeah, that's it.
And I'm just curious, Giselle, for you, what helped you to kind of hone in on your employment goals? You knew you wanted to go to college. Did you know what you wanted to study?
Yeah, so I'm bringing this to you from a college student perspective. I totally agree with everything that Allison and Alexis have mentioned. I think for me, yes, I've known that I wanted to go to college since I was like very young. I had thought of like, various majors that I wanted to do, different like career paths and things like that. I think for me, what really helped me was that I was in college prep electives like throughout my entire 4 years of high school. So that really gave me the chance to just learn more about the higher education system and, the things that I needed to do to get there. I would say that now I am, like I mentioned, my major is sociology, and I think I really came upon that after I was in a AP psychology class my senior year, and I really just found a lot of interest in the sociologists that we were studying for our social unit. And yeah, so sociology for me was a very last minute thing. But over time, I really have grown to fall in love with a major, and it's something that I'm very interested in. Now I'm a semester away from graduation with my
Oh,
BA,
wow.
and I could say that I personally, I love school. I love learning. I really am hoping to pursue grad school right after this. And I just had this conversation with my DOR counselor last week, and they were asking what is that I want to do. And, I've been in school for a while, and I've still been trying to do that career exploration to see what is it exactly that I want to pursue after graduation. And it's a lot of pressure. It really is. So I certainly do agree that counselors really do need to promote more career exploration for their clients. Like I think Alexis mentioned like job shadowing, and Allison mentioned having that job experience, and that is very valid. Like I mentioned, I want to go to grad school. For what exactly? I'm still like in that process of looking at different grad programs, but I do feel that pressure of like, if I don't set a specific program, or I don't have like an exact employment goal in mind right now, I'm not going to get that support from DOR. So it is a very, very much of a challenging time.
Have you been able
but
to get experience in there?
what was that, Lisa?
Have you get any work experience?
I have. So I think that has definitely narrowed my interests into what I'm interested in pursuing. But I think my 3 years in college have definitely sped by faster than I thought. So it's time to make choices again. But yes, I'm very much looking forward to graduating and just pursuing more education. And I know that, once I settle on something, I will receive the support that I need from Department of Rehab.
This is a little bit of a side note, but Giselle, could you just share briefly about the organization that you started, College Spaces from Different Places?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So I am currently co-founder and co-leader of College Spaces from Different Places. It's a peer-led student organization through the San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind, and I started it along with another student from UCLA back in December of 2020. It was right in the middle of the pandemic, and originally we had started it because we just really felt that all of us as visually impaired undergrad college students were missing out on not being able to be on campus and just being stuck at home taking online classes. So we really felt that we had the ability to bring together students from all across California and just really start something where we could all just come together to share in our accomplishments and challenges. And I can say that we are still going strong with the program. My original co-lead has since graduated, so now I am co-leading it with another student who attends City College of San Francisco. And we are, it'll be 3 years in this upcoming December since we started the organization. And now that we are starting to do things in person, we have also been able to incorporate some in-person events. So we have, you know, I know that it's definitely something that is more accessible for people who are local. But we have started to do things around the Bay Area, like going picnics at the beach and exploring different neighborhoods here in San Francisco, like Chinatown. And it's just, it means a lot to me.
Maybe
I felt
something to do with this.
yeah, so it's just been really, really awesome to see how people have been able to connect with one another. I've seen many friendships, including myself, like develop out of this program, and it's just really cool to see that. And it's something that I definitely hope that we can continue to grow and hopefully bring more people. So yeah.
I understand you have different topics every time you meet, so maybe DOR can be a topic if you haven't already discussed it.
Oh, certainly, yes. We have like monthly meetings on Zoom, and we just touch on various topics like how to get involved with our community in terms of volunteering. We've done internships, we've done study tips, we've had like guest speakers come in and talk about, you know, their careers and, you know, just doing more of that career exploration. So yeah, our topics vary on a lot of things.
Thank you. Does DOR cover the cost of college no matter what your career goal is on your plan for employment? This is a question more probably for Alexis and Allison.
Okay, I'll take it.
Go for it.
So yeah, I guess the goal, the employment goal has to be some, or at least the college goal has to be something that provides employment at the end of it. So, or at least enables the student to have employment. So maybe, you know, checking that the goal that you have is something you can do in your local area using a website like ONET to make sure that there are employment opportunities in the area, that it's not just going to lead nowhere. I think that's something that would be assessed beforehand, before you launch into that. We have some sort of restrictions on the education that you would go to for post-secondary. The college would have to be an accredited college. For us in Idaho, we can only, if a student wanted to go out of state to study, for example, we can only pay, we can actually help with tuition, but we can only pay up to the amount that would be paid for in-state tuition. We cannot pay for room and board, but we can do tuition and books. But that is after any grants have been set against the tuition costs. So we can do a lot, but we can't do everything. So yeah, there are some limits, and I'm not sure how that works state to state. So Alexis, maybe you could enlighten us on yours.
Yes, so Allison, you pretty much covered what I was going to say. Since this is a national audience, I, want to keep it very general. So I would encourage you, if you have questions about what specific college services your rehab agency would cover, reach out to your counselor or office locally, because they can give you the best information for your area. And I liked what Allison said about using ONET. I'd also suggest using the Bureau of Labor Statistics website, because what I like about the BLS site is the fact that they show whether a given job is going to increase or decrease in the upcoming years. Like, for example, it might say job growth is expected to increase by 9%, let's say, in the next 10 years, or this particular field is decreasing, it's not growing. So that kind of information can be very helpful when students and counselors are working on plans for employment, is to find out, is that goal something that is going to be sustainable in the future? So I think using all your resources and consulting with your rehab staff will help you achieve a good, satisfying employment outcome.
Thank you. Giselle, did you have anything you wanted to share? Have you had,
No, I think they covered it all.
and did you personally feel like you had everything covered from DOR that you expected to have covered?
Yeah, so I could say for me personally, I received financial aid. So with me, DOR does not pay for any of my tuition, and that's mainly because all of my tuition is covered by financial aid. But I have been told that if that were not the case, then DOR would be covering my tuition. They do cover at the CSU rate, and I do attend a CSU, so I think it would cover pretty much all of it.
Lisa, this is Richard. I wanted to add, for those who are watching live or recording, you can also reference our College Conversations, the Economics of College for More Financial Aid Advice, which was a very good webinar from November of 2022, I believe.
That's right. Yes, thank you. Okie doke. So our next question is, what role does or did self-advocacy play in your VR journey? And it'd be great if, Allison, you had mentioned you went back as a master's degree student and you were a DOR client, which is very interesting because you got to play both sides of the spectrum
Right.
there.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's nice to maybe hear from you first, and then we'll move on to our other panelists.
Yes, no, that it's such a great question, because I think for me, part of my journey as I went blind was learning how to self-advocate. I think I'm by nature an introvert, and not hugely comfortable in social settings and all of that. And so as I lost my vision, it was like, well, I'm going to have to self-advocate or not be able to to survive. So that was a huge change for me. And it continued when I was trying to do my master's. I'd done a bachelor's as a sighted person, and it was in England. So here I am in the US, and there were quite a few obstacles to overcome. I didn't even, actually, when I was a student in England getting my bachelor's, they didn't even issue transcripts. Transcripts were not a thing. So when I came to do my master's, they were like, we need your transcripts. And I was like, well, I don't have transcripts. And they're like, well, we can't take you if you don't have transcripts. And I had to fight my corner on that one very hard, even just to get, that first step done. So that was one piece. And then just during college, there was a lot of self-advocacy needed to keep my just when the classes weren't accessible, or assignments weren't accessible, it was definitely important to be able to speak up about that. I had a case with textbooks where I forget what the order was, but I went to the disability services at the college and said, what do I do about getting this textbook made accessible? And they said, well, you should talk to your department. So I talked to the department head. This was at Louisiana Tech. And he said, well, you should really talk directly to the teacher. So I went to the teacher, and I said, what do I need to do about this? She said, well, that she could make it available, but that she really had expected me to have better self-advocacy skills. At the end of it, I was like, okay, well, I'm not sure what I did wrong. I had gone through all the steps that were required, but there is definitely a constant need to sort of help other people understand how we access things, and and just to sort of to advocate for that and educate people in what's needed. So I learned a lot. going through that journey, and just working with the VR program gave me, I guess, the knowledge that I needed, and understanding my rights, and just being around other people that were going through that same journey. I think all those pieces helped me, kind of opened me up to what was possible as far as what I could achieve.
And I bet that really helped inform your work with the students who are blind and low vision.
Absolutely, yes. I have a very deep empathy with a lot of that stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Alexis, did you have anything to add?
Allison covered a lot of what I was planning to say, but what I would like to add is self-advocacy is one of the most important skills that students can learn in their growing up years, because once you are an adult, there won't be a teacher of the visually impaired to advocate for you. Your parents won't advocate, or sometimes they can't talk to the university without a signed release. So in order to be comfortable with talking with others, advocating for your needs, that really should start young. And I think it's important that students, even young students, younger than 14, be given simple choices so that they can learn to speak up for their needs. So, for example, if a student in school is told by a para that, oh, let me just write that for you, and the student knows how to write it in Braille or print, the student should be given the opportunity to say, no, I can write this myself. And those simple little baby steps will just keep adding and building, and will enable that student to ultimately be an independent grown-up college student and eventually a successful employee.
Yeah. Allison and I were talking yesterday about how we can start to hand over those reins, and you can even start to do it at the end of elementary school by having your child write an email to their teacher stating, if they're, it's a new teacher in a new school year, what their needs are listed on their IEP and how they learn best, and share a little bit about themselves. And then, by middle school, they can be writing their own emails to 7 teachers or however many there are. And they can just get used to advocating for themselves on their own without mom and dad, really being a part of it. Of course, mom and dad can always look over the email, but that's one of the ways I've been handing over the reins with my kids. Anything to add on that question before we go on to the next one?
Yeah, I can add briefly. So for me, I feel like my self-advocacy started at a really young age. I grew up in a single parent household, and my parent does not speak English, so there was that language barrier. So for me, I was always just very present and very active in advocating for myself and just voicing my needs. Since I was like in elementary school, I've been present at like every IEP meeting, and I could say that as a child, I was very outspoken and extremely opinionated. I feel like I still am, but more so as a child. So I was always asking for the things that I needed and just communicating my needs to my teachers. And I really like the point that Lisa made about having, your child emailing, teachers about their needs, because a lot of that was done for me throughout elementary school, middle school, and even still like at the beginning of high school, by my aide or my TVI. And then once I requested to not have an aide anymore, I started learning that, a lot of this I had to do myself now, which was great because it really did prepare me and just set me on the right path for starting college. Because like it was mentioned earlier, you don't have a TVI in college, you don't have all these people just, handing everything over to you. A lot of it is about just locating resources on your own and doing a lot of it on your own as an adult would. So yes, I completely support that idea. I think the sooner you are able to pass those responsibilities on to your child or student, the better. I do highly encourage just to really establish that communication between, you know, your child and their teachers, just so they know, you know, like you need something, here are the ways in which you can communicate these needs to the people around you.
Lisa,
you.
this is Richard. I want to add to that.
Yeah, please.
So talking about self-advocacy, having been a VR participant, student, consumer myself many years ago, I think part of that is the emailing and the contacting the counselor as early as possible, but it's organization, being very organized and keeping a record of all your communications with all of your counselors. In many cases, some of us may have more than one counselor over the span of our time, going from high school to college to our first job. So kind of keeping track and letting the new counselor know what your needs are and how you communicate best, and getting to know what their expectations are. This is above and beyond the plan for employment. This is all the interpersonal communications you naturally will have with these people. And I think that's part of your self-advocacy, at least it was for me. And I think that communication is very important. And I'm sure Allison and Alexis, you've had cases transferred, and I don't know about you, Giselle, if you've had more than one counselor, but it's very routine these days to have more than one counselor.
And also too, to find out what is the best form of communication with that counselor. Are they someone who emails a lot? Are there somebody on the phones a lot? And are they texting, right? And a lot of students are texting these days. So I think that's helpful too.
Lisa, do we want to introduce our new panelist?
Is Jacob here?
Jacob is here.
Hi,
maybe
Jacob.
he can start off by introducing yourself, Jacob, and then we'll throw in you to the mix of the questions.
Okay. Yeah, I just like 15 minutes ago got out of another meeting. I had the wrong time down.
You're fine. You're
with
fine.
For this. So first off, hello, I am Jacob Ray. I'm located in Birmingham, Alabama. I am a junior at University of Alabama at Birmingham, and I am majoring in civil engineering.
And you had a little bit of a journey going through different colleges to get where you are. Do you want to just say about that?
I started off my academic career. I started off planning for a military style career. And I initiated college at Marion Military Institute in Marion, Alabama. I went there for 2 years and then transferred to UAB afterwards.
Got it. Thank you. We were just talking about the role of self-advocacy in your VR journey. Did you want to share a little bit about what you did?
What I did was I kind of had a bumpy road on that front. I didn't really start early enough.
You had a later diagnosis.
Yes, right? I did definitely have a later diagnosis, especially in the advanced details of the late diagnosis came out, over time. So for me, it's kind of a little bit of a different story, but that would be probably the one thing that I would change is kind of like go a little bit earlier, do that earlier, of not just implementing it, but understanding what you need and your personal disability and what can help you.
Yeah, and when you're trying to figure all that out as your diagnosis is coming down, and what does it mean, and how does it affect me, and what my needs are, it can be really confusing, and also for parents too that are trying to help guide you through that process.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next question. If there is one piece of advice that you would give to someone who is about to embark on their VR or DR journey, what would it be? And what do you wish that you had known? So should we jump over to Giselle for that one?
Hi, yes. I apologize for all the background noise. I'm like in between classes, so I just randomly stepped into a room.
We hear
But
nothing.
but yeah, I would say for me is definitely just like developing that relationship and figuring out what kind of dynamic are you going to have with your counselor. Like Richard mentioned earlier, about like having various counselors throughout your career. I have, I'm on my third one right now, and I've only been a client for 6 years, so it's definitely been
Last time.
So yeah, I'll give this little brief explanation. I had a counselor who retired in October. I did not find out until like February. And I just was able to get a hold of the new one like last week. So yes, it has been a very interesting experience, but I do recommend that, just like I said, communication is key, staying in touch and just really figuring out how best you can really keep that relationship strong. Don't give up on Department of Rehab. I know sometimes it's a bumpy ride, but they definitely are here to support you and just try to help you be as successful as possible.
Thank you. Alexis, do you have anything to add? Allison?
Yes, I think the most important piece of advice I can give a new client is to be willing to express your needs, and don't be afraid to, share what your goals are with the counselor. Even as a 14-year-old, and if you know what you want to do, it's okay to tell your counselor, hey, I want to do this for a career. And I think it's important for the counselor to use good listening skills, active listening, and just come to an understanding with the participant.
Thank you.
I like that. I think that relationship is so important. And then for me, I would even extend it beyond that, is to find people who, adults that you really admire, that you have those role models, and to really develop relationships and to speak up and connect. And that would be true in school with teachers, in college with professors, and then as you're interacting within the vocational rehabilitation world, there will be people around who are going through the system as well, and they're always also a great resource to connect with. Another little bit of advice is to try everything once. If the counselor is suggesting, what about this, what about that, or why don't you do this training or this program, maybe try it once. You might think, oh, I don't want to do that, that's not something that interests me, or I wouldn't like it. I know I wouldn't like it, even though I've never done it. Just maybe give it everything a try just once, and then you'll know for sure.
Great advice. Yeah. For our VR or DOR professionals, what is it that you wish us parents would or would not do when it comes to working with our students?
I guess I can start that one. I think it's very important that parents are willing to let their children take risks and allow them to try things, because so often I see in my work parents that struggle to let go, and that unwillingness to let go or loosen the apron strings really holds the student back. Because if students are 17 or 18 and don't know how to do the most basic of daily living skills, for instance, cutting food, that will hold them back much more than academic issues, because a student who is not able to perform basic independent living skills at college or another environment will be at a distinct disadvantage. So I guess my point is that parents should allow their students to make mistakes. Parents should not be so quick to swoop in and rescue the student, because if the student is continually rescued, they are not going to learn how to fix their own mistakes. So really, parents, allow your students to make mistakes.
And sometimes you have to remind your spouse, step back, let him or her.
And I love that. And I do think, it's easy for us to say that. I know it can be really hard because our role as parents, and even for us in the, fields that we're in, is that we want to help and we want to make things easy and painless and all of that. So it really is a challenge to, especially as as your child has grown up, you've been there and you've probably gone through a lot with different situations with them, and that you've been the one that's helped. It is, I recognize how hard that is, but it is such a freeing thing. For me personally, I had to train my husband, so it's not even just parents that do this. It was like when I first lost my vision, I just wanted him to help all the time. And then I got training and it was a very different story. I was like, no, now I have the skills I need and I actually can be independent. And he said it was the hardest thing for him to step back and let me just do it, especially in public when people are looking and going, why aren't you helping that poor woman? So it's definitely a challenge to do, but it's an incredibly freeing thing to equip your child and then allow them to do it. The one other thing I would add is for you, and you're doing it already because you're here, but is to get informed about the Vocational Rehabilitation Agency and the process that is. I think it can be very confusing as a parent that there's everything that the school is doing, but then outside of the school you have all these different that you've got the vocational rehabilitation, and then you've got your consumer groups like NFB and ACB and those kind of organizations. And I definitely get people who are just very confused about who is offering a program or who's doing a particular activity. So the more informed you are, the more you understand what's going on, the better your student will be able to benefit from it. And then I think having a positive attitude about VR, about what is on offer, hopefully that will enable the student to jump on board as well, because they'll see that you really value it.
Giselle and Jacob, do you think your parents got the balance right?
Yeah, so I can go ahead. So for me, like I mentioned, I honestly have felt like I have done a lot of it on my own. So obviously my mom is aware of like what DOR is, and especially when I was in high school, we met with my DOR counselor at the time and all of that. But honestly, there hasn't really been much contact between like her and my counselors or anything like that. So I feel like for me, because she knows that I'm very much capable of doing so much on my own, and also I live on my own now and all of that. So I think that she's just has stepped way back, which I don't mind because I am very independent and I like doing things on my own. and I like my space, and I'm just like a very reserved person in that aspect. So for me, it's been totally okay with her stepping back as much as she has. I feel like it also gives me the sense that she trusts me and she knows that I'm responsible and like more than capable of being a responsible adult and just doing what I need to do to take care of myself.
Nice. Jacob, what about you? Did mom and dad get the balance right?
I'm gonna be honest, it's kind of hard to look objectively at that. Um, personally, if I was talking about it like to myself, I would say, you know, can kind of be annoying, just being blunt. Um, but when I did need my mom or my dad to help me as far as any difficulties that I may have been going through with the administrative side or any other parts regarding school or my career choices or what I want to do as far as my future career, um, then on that aspect, yes, they were probably more helpful than any other person that I've asked for help from or any other aspect in my life. They've helped immensely.
Mhm. And could you please share what your major is and what career goal or employment goal you have?
Um, my current major is civil engineering. Um, I switched recently from materials because this is a part of what my mom helped me figure out. We decided that materials is not down the road is not going to be something that I could probably do. Um, and decided that civil engineering is more, up my alley and kind of what I would be able to do. I am focusing more towards the business side of engineering. So I have done some kind of internships for county work stuff, and I've decided that that's the kind of stuff that I like, the government contracting, um, the like road construction kind of stuff. Um, and that's a heavy part of what both of my parents have helped me decide on what I want to do.
Before you came on the call, we talked about the role of work experience and how important it is and being able to hone in on your employment goals. So you spoke to that beautifully well. Is there anything you wanted to share with the audience? We didn't have you for the first part of our panel discussion, so I wanted to make sure you had that opportunity.
Um, I guess just kind of going more in depth on which you asked me earlier and you mentioned earlier of how I have a more recent diagnosis. Um, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but my diagnosis is a degenerative retinal eye disease, with some other, astigmatism and some other stuff mixed in there. Um, Thankfully, both of my parents do Social Security kind of work, that field, so they have a lot of prior knowledge to that, and that's part of why they've been so helpful. It's because they kind of know firsthand, um, and they help their own clients to get disability. So that's kind of all that I think that is extra that I would need to let them know.
Yeah, you're lucky that you have that. Some parents are certainly more informed than other parents, and that can make a big difference.
Yes, ma'am.
Did we have any other questions, Lisa, or was that?
We've gotten through our questions, and I know that we're getting close to Q&A time. So is there any who wanted to share anything else before we transition to Q&A?
I always see you logging on and logging off, Lisa. I think you're on your computer as well, because it says Lisa has joined and Lisa has left. So I know you're on your phone, but I wanted to ask our panelists if they had any questions for each other before we did Q&A. We've got 2 or 3 questions we could field easily.
Excellent.
That's a good question.
You didn't know I was going to ask you that, did you?
I'd love to hear more from the students about their experiences. I don't know specifically what, like, was VR confusing to you? Like, just understanding the, you know, the process and how that integrated with what you were getting in school. I guess maybe that isn't so relevant for you, Jacob, but.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can go ahead and answer. So I feel like for me, it was very straightforward. I really liked the counselor that I had at the very beginning. I had him all through high school, and just a very easy person to work with, and was just very open to my idea of pursuing a 4-year university afterwards. And I say this because oftentimes I got the, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you don't want to go to community college instead? And just all these questions that I didn't particularly care for to hear. But he was just very, very open about it. Like, you know, he would look over my transcripts and he saw that I had like really good grades, and that I was on that pathway of meeting, you know, all the requirements in high school to be on that path for a 4-year. And when it came time for me during my senior year of applying to like various universities and all of that, and deciding on San Francisco State, just very supportive about that, and gave me, you know, the rundown of what services DOR could provide, whether it was like financially or like external, to support me on my higher education journey. So that to me was very comforting, because it is a huge transition to go from high school straight into a 4-year. And so yeah, I would say for me it was very straightforward. I had a lot of information about it, and everything was super clear.
And it's great that you're such a strong personality, because when people were asking you, are you sure you want to do that? You'd be like, yes, I'm sure I want to do that. But
Oh yeah.
not self-assured could be put off by people questioning.
It is very off-putting, very off-putting. I mean, no one wants other people to kind of just jump into their lives and just be like questioning their abilities and their decisions and things like that. So yeah, I was very glad that at least my Department of Rehab counselor was very supportive of my choices.
I think that's so cool. I've had wondered about what gives people the resilience, the grit to keep going, and I think one of the factors is just having people around you who are supporting you and encouraging you. And so, it sounds like your counselor was one of those people.
Oh, definitely. And I think definitely. I'm a very stubborn person, so you say one thing, I'll tell you the complete opposite. So I think people telling me, "Oh yeah, like, are you sure you don't want to go to community college?" I was like, no, I'm just gonna contradict you and do the opposite. So yes.
Nice.
Jacob, what about you? Did you
I
find
kind of had the same kind of thing. So this kind of going back in time for me. So I finished, no, it was my senior year of high school, and that's when I got my first official diagnosis, but I didn't know the details yet. I just knew, you know, hey, there's something. And what kind of, you know, hit me about that was it was at the same time I was applying to the Air Force Academy, because I was kind of very headstrong about doing, you know, getting a military career. And just like Giselle said, very stubborn. You know, it's kind of in our family history. We're known to be stubborn. And then I got denied from the Air Force Academy, and I decided, so what, that's not, it didn't work out. Then I found out my sister went to a school near the junior college I went to, MMI. And so I kind of had an idea of what they did. They helped people prepare to apply again to the Air Force Academy or service academies. So I went there, or applied there. I applied to UAB as well. I actually got a higher scholarship amount from UAB than MMI, but I decided to go to MMI instead.
And what
The
does
reason
MMI for? Sorry.
MMI is the Marion Military Institute. I can type that in the chat if you want to see how it's spelled.
No worries. I was just about being in a national audience. We don't know all
yes.
the
So
acronyms.
no, that's on me. It is kind of confusing knowing all the acronyms. So I went there, but at first I was still deciding where I wanted to go, and I was talking to my rehab counselor and to both my parents and my brother as well, because he was already attending school. And everyone asked me the same kind of thing. Are you sure you don't want to go to, junior college or to somewhere else? Because it's a military school. It's going to be not just physically demanding, but mentally demanding as well. However, in the end, I finished. I graduated from the institution. I got my diploma. And I finished. I graduated with honors as well. So, I finished. But what people, what they asked me beforehand and afterwards was, why did you want to go there instead of get more money somewhere else? And it just going on the line of being stubborn, I wanted to prove not only to myself and, kind of be like, haha, I did it to myself, but to other people as well. I wanted to prove that I could do that. And that's, a part of the challenge that I went to was not just other people doubting me, but myself. And I'm glad that I actually signed up for, it was at the same time when I did the Air Force Academy stuff, when I signed up for rehab counseling. And I got my first counselor, which I still have him. And he was probably one of the most helpful people during that time to help me get through that. So, I mean, I guess, just long story short, it's the same thing as just Giselle said, of being stubborn, trying to prove to myself and other people that I could do something when they were trying to say I couldn't.
And I think it's so common for our population to be told, you can't do it, or people doubting us. And it's so easy to doubt ourselves. So I think so many of us can relate to what you just said, Jacob. So thanks for bringing that up.
Lisa, before we go to questions, I do want to ask Allison and Alexis a quick question. Sometimes you have unrealistic goals, or you have to rewrite the plan for employment. How do you navigate that conversation? What are some of your tools in your toolkit to say, hey, maybe mathematician isn't your game, or your employment goal is evolving. It looks like you might have a different, ambition. What does that look like, and what should people be aware of?
Alexis, do you want to take that?
Sure, I can try. That can be a very tough conversation, depending on the age of the student. I think for younger students, it's more understandable that the employment goal would be evolving. But I think as as the student matures, I think there needs to be more discussion of, okay, you're almost done with college, you know, and you still don't know what you want to do. We need to really think about this. So I like to talk to students about, what do you see yourself doing? Have you done any research? I'm a big proponent of informational interviews. So I always encourage my students to talk to people in their area of interest. And I will even reach out to people I know in that area, or, you know, just plumb my network for connections. So I think it's real important that students are realistic about their goal. And yes, we do have to have those hard conversations of, you know, maybe this particular goal isn't the right fit for you, but, you know, you could do something related. Like, for example, if a student wanted to be a physician, maybe there could be something related, you know, in the medical field, like medical billing coder, or maybe a medical, you know, receptionist at a doctor's office, something like that.
Right.
So I think it's important that students are aware of other options in their field of interest. That's a very long answer.
Thank you. And Allison, do you have a quick reply? I want to jump into questions really quick here, but if you have
I mean, just real quick. I mean, I love that. I think that I like the student to discover for themselves where those, you know, where it's not realistic. So to actually get them into some kind of work experience, or, you know, some actual experience. Had a student who they really wanted to do veterinary, and they had a work experience in a vet office, and they were like, I do not want to do that. Do not want to deal with poop and blood and all of that. And, you know, it was just, for them, they came to that understanding themselves. So I think if that's possible, that's a really good way to go for them to figure it out.
Thank you, Lisa.
So we just have questions that are in the chat. Can I read a couple of those off?
Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah, okay. So there was a couple questions about college spaces from different places, and if that's only for California students. Giselle, can you comment?
Yes, so originally, yes, that's what we started as. It is specific to California students, especially right now. Like I mentioned, we are doing in-person events, so just keeping it within California makes it a little more fair for people to not like feel left out from being out of state. But if we were to have a greater interest from people outside of California, then there is a possibility that we could extend it to other states. So please, if you're interested, please, I left the contact info in the chat. I think Richard also put it in there. Her name is Daisy Soto. She is the youth coordinator at the Lighthouse, and
The possibility we could extend it.
Yes, there is. So if you are interested.
Oh, somebody's off of mute in the background. Okay, thanks, Giselle. Okay.
Yeah, so if you are interested, go ahead and email her. Her email is also there.
Thank you. If a student will be attending college out of state, which rehab agency can they receive services from? Their local agency or the agency in the state where the college is located? That's a very good question. Allison, Alexis?
Yeah, we actually have a student that is doing that. It was kind of a both and situation. and it may be up to the student how much of that they want to do. Certainly the home state can continue to provide services, but obviously, practically speaking, that might not be possible in some cases. So we had a student came to one of our universities and needed O&M. So she signed up with our agency just for some very specific services that she needed on campus, and the help that she needed, support she needed while she was actually located there, but she was still a client of her agency back in her home state.
Okay, anyone else wanted to add to that, or should we go on to the next question?
Let's go on to the next question for the sake of time.
Okay, so this one's from Natalie. If you become a DOR client when you are 15 or 16 and you had a counselor because you were at a school for the blind, what do you do if you decide to take a gap year and then you graduate from high school? Let's see. Do you switch counselors? Kind of where does that leave you? It sounds like. And in this case, the student has emailed countless times to the counselor, but has not gotten a response. So what do you do next?
I'm not quite sure I understand. Could you repeat the scenario?
Sure. They were at a school for the blind and they had assigned to them because they were at a school for the blind. And then they graduated and then they went back to having their, I guess, their regional counselor, and they have not been able to get any response from that person. So what should they do next?
That's a great question. Alexis,
sure, I can.
You would say.
Sure. If that were to happen in my world, what I would encourage the student to do is find out who the supervisor is and reach out to that supervisor, because the supervisor can help connect the student with the counselor and maybe give some guidance to the counselor about, timely responses.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely requirements for counselors to be in contact with clients on a regular basis, I think so. Yeah.
We have another question. My high school students are in a rural Illinois area. There are no O&M instructors available at the school or in the Bureau of Blind Services. It appears that the only services provided are for those who are not planning on attending college. What can be done to help my students who are planning to attend college get the devices and support that Giselle has available to her? So rural Illinois, no O&M instructors. Richard, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think probably advocacy goes a long way. I think, again, sometimes if O&M isn't available, the agency can find contractors. Sometimes O&M instructors who are retired, who work for the VA, who work for the school district might do that in the summer on contract. Talk to your local blindness agencies, do some advocacy work, and find those resources if they don't exist, and connect them with your state agency. I think, not all states are equal in terms of how Voc Rehab works, but the more you can provide them, if they're not providing you with sufficient information, the better off you are. And you have to be proactive with Voc Rehab. You have to be proactive. And anticipate what your needs are 6 months sooner than you need them in many cases. So that's my quick advice. Maybe one more question, Lisa, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, what did you do with your VR counselor at the age of 14? Or what do you do with your students who are 14 to the DOR or VR professionals?
Wonder if Giselle would.
Yeah, were you doing assessments for different careers already, interest inventories? What sorts of things would you do with your 14-year-olds?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, for me, it was my TVI who got me in contact with the counselor that was assigned to my region. And through that, we had to fill out an application form, just with, some of my information and things like that. And then from there, it takes, a few weeks to get processed. And then I became a client. And some of the things that I did, like I mentioned, throughout high school, I would attend just different workshops that were geared towards the blind youth. So for example, a lot of these workshops were through the Lighthouse for the Blind here in San Francisco, and the workshops focused on like self-advocacy. We did another one where we got to go to the CT BVI conference, which is a conference here in California for transcribers, educators of the blind and visually impaired. We did other workshops that focused on like employment and putting together resumes and cover letters. And these were all like weekend workshops, which like their price ranged around like $900. So my permanent rehab counselor was able to provide funding for those. And beyond that, yeah, there wasn't a lot that I needed at the time because of course I was still under my school district's wing. So they provided a lot. But even if there is not, a lot going on for your student, like during that time period, I would suggest that the sooner the better, that you can get your student registered to be a client of DOR.
Giselle, thank you so much. And we have a hard end at top or at the half hour. So we're going to transition over to the closing. And Lisa, did you have a final word?
Oh, I was just going to mention our directory of services on the APH website. If you're ever looking for services, it is very extensive for everyone's state pretty much. So please refer there. And don't forget, in 2 weeks' time, we'll have this posted up on our YouTube playlist.
All of that is at aphconnectcenter.org. Katie also put that in the chat. Lisa, thank you so much for being our MC. Giselle, Jacob, Allison, Alexis. Did I get everybody? Thank you all so much. We value your time, your expertise, your consultation. We couldn't do it without you. So you all deserve a round of applause. Thank you to our audience. And we are going to stop the recording and give you the code. So thank you.